With all the illicit substance issues in the AFL over the past few years, we always hear the same things. The league will deny there is a problem, the clubs will say the majority of their players are fine, and any senior leaders will give straight bad answers. But finally, we have the perspective of a player. Brandon Jack played 28 games for Sydney and has written opinion pieces for The Age recently. His latest one focused on our reaction to illicit substance issues in the AFL based off the Joel Smith situation. It's a great read that I highly recommend, so the article's link will be in the description of this video. But there were a few interesting points and analogies made by Brandon that I feel we need to go over. The general theme of Brandon's piece is that when AFL players are caught taking drugs, it really isn't a big deal, and that the people in AA or NA should be the people we try to focus on and help. They are the ones with the real addiction problems. He says, but is there a problem within the AFL specifically? No. Definitely I will say no. Go to a Narcotics Anonymous meeting in any local hall and you'll hear stories of addiction shattering a person's life. You can hear it in their voices, the daily struggle to live with addiction. These are the impacts of a real drug problem. I do agree mostly with this point, and the fact he used that in 2019 it was reported more than 1 million Australians admitted to using cocaine, the drug in which is always used in these AFL player incidents according to Brandon. So the point which the AFL repeatedly says in that the use of illicit substances in the whole of society is a problem is great. But at the same time, both the AFL and this opinion piece feel like they are blame deflecting and not taking into account where drug use can go. Brandon writes, this rinse and repeat outrage will eventually subside. If anything, this is all mere entertainment and distraction, much like the game that the players are paid to play. It is not about the use of drugs. The ramifications of trauma, the lack of access to mental health services will not be found in a dissection of a footy player who engages in recreational cocaine use. This is a fascinating viewpoint. From Brandon's perspective, all the upheaval of, say, the Joel Smith scenario is a form of entertainment itself. In a way, he isn't wrong. The news can milk it for a while, and us fans can get some joy from the rumour mill that always comes with this kind of story. But it is about the use of drugs. No matter who you are, where you come from, or anything like this, it can get a grip of you and others around you. Just ask Ben Cousins. As Brandon says, the ramifications of trauma and lack of access to mental health services don't affect players who use recreationally. It seems like he is talking about himself, as he admitted in the opening he had dabbled in cocaine. But maybe he can handle doing some drugs here and there, but others will get in far deeper. And it's why the trafficking charges of Joel Smith are so shocking, and other stories like Sam Fisher's and legendary coach Bomber Thompson prove that this isn't a joke or a bit of fun. Just look it up online. You'll see far more stories of players or coaches' lives being ruined by drugs than you think, and these are just the ones we know about. Now, I'm not saying I have sympathy or no sympathy for the people who went down these paths, but I can't accept that because an AFL player gets caught, we should all yawn, move on, and say he or she will be fine. History shows you it can go astray very quickly. Now, I do understand Brandon and his next point. In relation to being caught with drugs, the core question of this whole thing, if there is one to inspect, is less a question and more a disappointment. This situation is of interest because people paid amounts of money to play football are expected to be role models, and in cases like this, we feel that they can't put their personal lives aside to fulfill that obligation for us. We have an unwritten social contract with the players we adore. There has been an expectation set, whether rightly or wrongly so, and it has been unmet. AFL players, especially high-profile ones, are role models. This is 100% true, and it's mostly with young children. They are gods in their eyes, and all fans will support their team, even when things are going bad. So how do you think a Melbourne fan feels when they see Joel Smith facing severe penalties and accusations that he texted teammates wanting to know if they would buy drugs off him? For a child, teenager, or adult, that would be a kick in the guts. Even my own experience with Bailey Smith was like this. After 2021, he was one of my favourite players, but when you see him caught taking drugs, you just shake your head in disappointment. However, these type of incidents can be turned around into positives. Smith hasn't been caught since and seems to be on the right track off the field. You can still become a role model even after a bad mistake. No one should ever be cancelled or blacklisted after one stupid decision with an illicit substance. It's hard to see now, but even Joel Smith can turn his public perception around. It will just take time. The social contract says that they live up to this idealized version we want them to be. Our end is to live in ignorance and pretend that they're just that. When the contract is shattered, we feel a bit foolish and start pointing fingers, Brandon says. It's a clever point. When these mistakes happen, I think as fans we do feel foolish, but we also feel sad, angry, disappointed and frustrated that a member of the team we support lets the entire club down. An action by one player can affect everyone associated with them, even the simple fan who watches them on the television. The final section I want to talk about leads us to the end of the column. It's one of my favourite parts, and it's incredibly well written by Brandon, who again did a fantastic job writing the whole piece. If you've ever watched The Wolf of Wall Street, the final scene is a real slap in the face. The camera pans out on a large audience who have paid to listen to a first-rate crook tell his tale. The focus is on the idiot smiling. They are the suckers in this. They're the ones obsessed with wealth and success to the point that they will take advice from someone who has committed financial crimes. But the further irony is that we're the audience of the tale too. If they're the dummies, what are we? Well, in the AFL scenario of this, we the audience are the lifeline. Brandon, throughout his opinion, subtly details fans as being deers in headlights. He uses the word foolish, and through the little paragraph I read before, he is clearly insisting we are being sucked into something not that important. He includes himself in that audience of the tale. But I have a different view to Brandon here. We really aren't less intelligent than those dummies or fools, but we want to know what is going on with our players, coaches and staff at our clubs. The reason why? Because we are invested in the AFL. Without us the fans, what is there? Nothing. No one would get paid if we didn't go to the games. No one would get sponsors if people didn't watch on TV, and the players would be working regular jobs like most of society does. So that's why we care when players are caught with drugs, especially when they are associated with the clubs we support monetarily and emotionally. And it's why when players turn it around, we equally support them. I'm sure some get a kick out of people more successful than them falling apart, and maybe they are the so-called dummies. But I think the reality is these events are so big because the AFL fan base doesn't want to support a code full of drug users that Brandon himself says satisfies the idea of elitism we have about them, that deep down, they're arrogant souls who believe they're above the rules. We don't want this, and it's why the football world acts as they do when these situations come about. Overall, this was a great insight by an ex-AFL player. We normally don't get articles this truthful and open, so I really appreciate Brandon's view. It's certainly a hot topic right now with a lot of different angles. I hope you all enjoyed the video, and please check out the full article to get Brandon's perspective. I'll see you all soon.